welcome back to another episode of Sisto Says, powered by Design 2147, a New York City code and expediting company. I'm here today for a second time with a good friend of mine, Steve Marcellino from Lippolis Electric.
Sisto,
Steve.
thank you for having me on again.
Yeah, welcome back.
You must have liked me the first time if you were willing to have me back.
Well, listen, not all the guests are liked, but we look for people that are informative. But I do like you.
Thank you.
Now, as a fellow podcaster, we'll give you a little plug for your podcast. Tell us a little bit about that.
Much appreciated. Yeah, so Carmine and I made the decision to start our own podcast called Beyond the Blueprint, powered by Lippolis Electric. And we're talking all things construction, business, sales, marketing, overall industry condition, preventative maintenance. We get a little bit technical on some of the episodes with some of the resident managers that we deal with here in the city, some engineers to discuss how to shut a New York City building down, infrared testing, how to test a transformer. And different avenues, so forth in the engineered services world. But we're not pigeonholing to just engineered services and construction alone. We'll dive deep into business, sales, relationships, community, and all the things that really make up our industry outside of just turning nuts and bolts.
Got it. So last year when you came in and we did a show, we talked about a really important aspect of having large buildings in New York City or outside the city, and doing preventive maintenance.
Correct.
And there are codes and there are national codes that really talk about what a building owner is really required to do, how to document it, and what that entails. So when we spoke last year, you've taken on this responsibility at Lippolis, and you constantly on LinkedIn are posting and showing photographs of how you can open up, a transformer, a switchgear, and it's filled with cobwebs and dead spiders and things that really can be detrimental to powering a building that requires certain voltage, certain amperage, and then all of a sudden they don't have it and they don't know why. Well, So tell us a little bit about NFPA and what they're doing about this, because I think that's really an important part. And as you know, my show is really about obeying the laws. They're there for a reason. They're to protect the people that are in the building. They're there to protect the people that work in the building. They're sometimes even there to protect the people that sleep there, right? Because
Correct.
It could be a residential tower. So tell us what NFPA is doing, and then we could get a little bit more into the New York City, Westchester, Long Island conversation.
Yeah, so NFPA 70B and NFPA 70E, 70B being the electrical maintenance code now, and 70E is the electrical safety code. And the reason I say now is because historically for the last, years prior to 2023, 70E and 70B were considered recommended best practices.
Gotcha.
They weren't necessarily codes, but OSHA was tricky at the time. If something were to happen, an event or something of that nature, they would reference 70B and 70E still, even though they weren't codes, and they would use it to their, their advantage when they were writing citations and things of that nature.
So just for the audience, so in 2023, that now became...
So now, as of 2023, 70B and 70E have become codes. So now if a building is not properly following the maintenance frequencies that are spelled out in NFPA 70B and the safety practices that are spelled out in NFPA 70E, they can be looking at, infractions from OSHA, their insurance companies. And I do know that state and municipalities on a local level nationwide are also trying to figure out how to adopt these codes, such as like a local law that we deal with here in New York.
So in New York City, has New York City adopted any of those sections yet?
They have not adopted them yet. They are doing a review in New York City, Westchester County, the different townships of Long Island and the different townships of New Jersey, on how they can properly adopt them and enforce them, in conjunction with all these different energy efficiency initiatives and all the other stuff that's going on.
Well, we're going to have Local Law 97 in New York City. So I I have a really good question for you.
Go for it.
So I never like to ask a question that I could stump one of the guests because that's not really my MO. So how do you convince an owner of a building in Midtown Manhattan, which you do, right, work at, and say, look, this section of NFPA is not adopted in New York City, but good practice makes sense to comply with these type of maintenance issues documented, so that you get, is it insurance driven? Is it safety driven? And why would a building owner, because I know from, all the tragedies we see here in New York City, that there's a lot of laws that people just don't comply with. And I'm a person of laws. I think that if they put a law in about checking the facade of the building, it's protect the people that are walking or the people that
Yeah.
live there. We've had an incident recently where something fell off and a woman died in Brooklyn, during a snowstorm. So laws are in effect, and they definitely apply to electric, because electric will kill you instantly.
Yeah.
So how do most of building owners navigate this when they know that it's not really a law?
Yeah, I think and that's a great question that I do get asked on a daily basis. If the reason for doing maintenance is for compliance and things of that nature, really at the end of the day, even though there isn't an inspector or some kind of code enforcement AHJ that's going to walk up to your door and knock and say, "Hey, I need to see your maintenance records." God forbid there is a safety event, or if OSHA is going to do an audit on your facility, on your maintenance records, or, your insurance company is looking to rewrite you, or, whatever the scenario may be, those reasons for OSHA or the insurance company or the authority having jurisdiction, if you're dealing with like joint commissions or a
Right.
state inspection agency, they can enforce based on 70B and 70E now.
Gotcha. So even though it's not a local law, they could enforce
they,
it on.
it can be enforced as a
Right.
code. The same way, that you need to have all of your labor right, laws posted in your cafeteria and your office building. Somebody could walk in and say, "Let me see your electrical maintenance records now." And if you can't produce your electrical maintenance records, OSHA or the insurance company or whoever it is will either start their fines, or the insurance companies are going to jack
Well,
up premiums.
Well,
Or
it only makes sense,
Yep.
When you think about sprinklers, right? So again, you have sprinkler annual inspections, you have monthly inspections, and you have to keep your records, right?
Yep.
So if you were, again, life safety, sprinkler, protecting, giving enough time for people to evacuate a building, but yet to keep the structure intact while the fire department is fighting it, right? So same thing here with the electrical. If it wasn't a local law, but now it's part of NFPA, eventually, New York City should and probably will adopt it
Yeah.
and say, hey, just like sprinkler, just like an elevator, you guys need to maintain your buildings from an electrical side, and you need to document it. And I think that that's, like I said, not to repeat myself, but some of the photos that you showed, that you post on LinkedIn, it's very intriguing to see how people never open up they don't open their electrical boxes. They don't open up, you're talking about thousands of boxes in an office building.
Yeah.
You're talking about, a building that's 40, 50 years old. How many licensed electricians have been in and out of that building, touching the main panel,
Yeah.
replacing panels? Forget the main switchgear downstairs. On an individual level in each space with their own, circuit breakers and all that.
It gets, and it gets a little hairy. And fortunately, the last few years, we've seen a major increase in electrical preventative maintenance in the New York City market, which is extremely important. I mean, because our division at Lippolis, the tech division, is a part of a network, a franchise
Right.
of other electrical contractors nationwide and also international. So we speak with our franchise partners out down south, out west, wherever they may be,
But
Minnesota,
electric is electric.
where electric is electric, and their clients and their customer base in other areas of the country and the world are so proactive, because they got factories and data centers and all
So
these
they
other
need- they
types
need-
of facilities. They can't go down. They can't afford to. And it's also a major safety hazard on top of it. So they didn't need these laws and restrictions
Because they were already doing it.
because they were already doing it. Fortunately, prior to 70B and 70E becoming as prevalent as it has in the last year, I would say in 2022 and 2021, specifically when the supply chain started to take a dive and it became harder to get material
Right.
and get
Still
things
not
shipped
easy.
around the world, it's still hard, it's horrific. And we saw a major increase in preventative maintenance at the time because people couldn't get a 2000 amp section of gear
Right.
in 2 3 weeks like they used to be able to, or it was harder to get a simple 800 amp heavy duty disconnect switch to put on your wall as a service switch, and different things like that. A lot of people were like, wow, we should invest into these maintenance programs, not only for the safety and the business continuity idea, but also because if something dies or something breaks,
Yeah,
what
you can't get a replacement part.
when are we going to get the replacement parts? Fuses became hard to get. Circuit breakers became hard to get. And I'm not talking your little 20 amp plug-in
No, of
breakers. I'm
course.
talking 3,000 amp frame and, a lot of these bigger breakers that are supplying, distribution power to the buildings. It became very hard to get them.
Well, and one of the things that, and again, I'm not an expert at, and I don't know if you are, but one of the things we talk about is becoming a green city,
Yep.
less fossil fuel, and you know you're in the electrical world, not only here in New York City, but from Westchester, Putnam County, Long
Yeah,
Island,
the whole
as far as
tri-state.
Orange County, Columbia County. You guys go,
Yeah,
your firm goes up a long way,
we cover a lot.
cover a lot of ground, and it's new construction, it's management, it's just a lot of everything, maintenance. Is that the biggest concern is, can they bring us power? And part of that is, as they continue to give more, as buildings convert, less power is going to go around. So if your system is already in trouble because of no preventive maintenance, common sense says
Yeah.
they're the first ones that are going to have the problems because they're not getting the voltage and the amperage that they need. And when it comes into the building, then they got problems. They're losing more. It's not efficient. So
Yeah.
here we go. I think that from what we hear, and the little bit that I do with electrical engineers, is we talk a lot about, can the grid provide what we're going to need as we become more reliable on electric than we ever have in the history of New York City.
Yeah, I mean, listen, like you said, I'm not an expert in local law 97, but I'm around it enough. And we do have experts in our office that specialize in areas like local law 97, energy efficiency and sustainability, that I hear about it and I deal with it in my own world with the maintenance and just, on a general scale, the overall electrical utility infrastructure in New York, and I think across the whole nation.
No,
It's
it's
not
around the
just a New
nation.
York
They're
thing.
not prepared for it.
They're not prepared for this. Let alone local law 97, the car chargers, the LED
Oh,
infrastructure. It gets so deep into like the factor of the demand that's being put on this infrastructure that's antiquated.
well, one of the biggest things that they talk about is LED lighting, and
Yeah.
there was an engineer here from HLB Lighting. They're a lighting consultant,
Hmm.
and the efficiency of an LED versus an old school light bulb is enormous
Oh
when you
yeah.
put it in a building,
When you go from
because it's like
halogen to
3%
LED, it's
versus 100%.
yeah,
You cut it by 97% or
it's
95%.
insane.
I mean, I don't quote me on it, but the number was astronomical. But again, that's the first step in local law 97,
Yeah,
doing small things. But these small things add up to a lot,
they
because
do.
if everybody does it, it takes pressure off the grid.
Yeah, and the other side of it too, aside from the grid, most recently, kind of, I'll speak on it as if it's a case study almost. We did a a big inspection for a large residential tower in Brooklyn, a very old building. They've never done any electrical maintenance. The building's been operable for 70 years.
Wow.
Run until failure type situation, and they have problems all over the place, from the main switchgear to the entire distribution riser feeding the apartments to the disconnects in the elevator
Sure.
machine rooms. And they turn around and say, all right, great, our inspection's done. How do you guys feel about us? They have probably 120 or 130 units, but it's vertical, so it's a pretty big, building, and it could be more. Don't quote me on the amount of apartments. Regardless, they want to put an electric stove in each one of the
Ugh,
apartments to comply with local law 97. And I'm sitting there with my coworker as we're hearing this from the property manager, and we're getting almost like nervous, because it's like, if you guys went to convert right now based on the current
millions,
state of your infrastructure,
millions.
not only is it going to cost a ton of money to upgrade, but we just told you guys that you had, out of, if we tested 130 pieces of electrical equipment, they had 172 problems.
Wow.
So that means each piece of equipment had more than one problem, whether it was an astronomical problem, or,
A small one.
a piece of hardware needs to be replaced, or something wasn't properly installed, grounding and bonding issues, whatever it is. But my point is, aside from the building load being supported, can the physical infrastructure in the current state of health that it's in physically support the demand of power
Right.
that's going to be
'Cause
ran
it's
through?
not, and it sounds so simple. Oh, no big deal. We'll just yank all the stoves out.
No.
We'll abandon the gas piping, and then we're going to put this in. And then you say, okay, well, you put it in. That's the physical part. Now you got to connect it to the existing infrastructure.
Yeah.
Is that infrastructure able to carry it? You know, what are the issues that that it has?
Yep.
How does it affect it? Where does it affect it? you know that all comes into play. So when we hear of these things and we read articles about it, oh, everybody's going to do this. Well, let's pump the brakes here, because
Yeah.
it's not that simple.
I
And
like to use the doctor office analogy, right? You go into the doctor's office, and I'm not just saying this because my wisdom tooth hurts right now, but you go, or the dentist office, my apologies. You go into the dentist and you got cavities all over the place, or you need a root canal, but you want to start by doing veneers in the front of your teeth to make
right,
your mouth look nice. You know, my father considers that lipstick on a pig.
right,
You got to go in, you need to do infection control, you need to get rid of all the
correct.
cavities and the gunk and the this and the that. Then you could start upgrading.
So your dad said it's like putting lipstick
Yeah,
on a pig. You gotta work through the
yeah. So it's like, when these guys want to just throw a bunch of electric stoves in or do the LED lights and all this nice stuff, which is great, once it's all said and done. But it's like putting lipstick on a pig if you do it from the upgrade
right.
back. So you really got to come in, you got to stabilize, you got to find where the deficiencies are, which is what we've done for a lot of our clients, and we are doing. And we come in, we do our inspection, make sure that the current infrastructure is in stable condition.
Of course.
And if it's not, we'll provide the remediations that need to be done. And listen, we're not coming to look to say, hey, you have a problem in your switchgear, you have to upgrade your whole service.
Listen, it's no different than when someone comes to us as code consultants and
Yep.
expediters, or code consultants more important. Hey, we want to put an addition on the building, and we go, oh, that's great. Okay, let us look into the rest of your building, because when we file, the building department's going to review your entire building. They're not just looking at your addition, and they're like, oh, well, we did this 20 years ago, but we never got a C of O, and we did this. All of a sudden, we've uncovered all these problems, but they're focused just on what the client wants,
Yep.
and doesn't realize that what they want gets implicated by the stuff that they didn't do. And
Correct.
preventive maintenance is no different than making sure that your building complies with everything that the New York City wants, that you stay in conformance,
Yeah.
that you file the appropriate paperwork for whatever it might be, your boilers, your facade, your elevator. Then when you're ready to do construction, it works.
Yeah.
A perfect example of what you were talking about is, we're looking to downsize, my wife and I, and we're looking at homes, and the realtor's saying, oh, well, this house needs a roof, and we're like, okay, great, give us a house, because we're going to put an energy efficient roof on, whether it's going to be a Tesla roof or a product similar to that,
Whatever it
that
is,
as
yeah.
as we go into the next phase and we have an electric car, we can do something sustainable. But the problem is that sometimes these partnerships that should be with the state and with the local municipalities and even the people supplying the power, that they should offer partnerships for a big office building in Manhattan, that when you do a protective maintenance or you're going to put, solar panels on your house, that they help us to get there,
I
and that
agree.
the burden can't always be on the owner.
No.
So I'm a big proponent of partnering with government, because I think if the government can partner with individuals, we can get a lot of things
Yeah.
done. But when you expect the homeowner to do it themselves, I think, or the building owner to take on a task like that,
Yeah.
sometimes it's too big of a hurdle.
And it's no different than like the NYSERDA program when there was a big push on getting EV car charging in. They should follow that same model where they help building owners or
Right,
operators to
we have
have some
plenty of
sort of
buildings
financial
that people
relief.
call here and ask us, are we required by code to put these in? And we're like, no.
Yeah.
And the people like, oh, but people in the building are complaining. All you got to do is run this, and we say, okay, sir, do you have any idea what it's going to take to put in 220 lines to all of these places?
Yeah.
And you want 6 of them in a building? You can't disrupt the tenants. You can't do this. You can't do that. You don't have enough power. So not only do you not have enough power for your building, your business as it is, or your building as it is, but now
Exactly.
you got to add 6 more stations. Well, that costs money. It's not free. They think, oh, just go to the building manager and tell him to run 6 of these.
Yeah.
Okay, well, when I call
Eh,
Lippolis Electric and I get an engineer, he doesn't go, 6 at $100 a piece is 600
No.
bucks. You're talking thousands.
And usually the run isn't like right next door to the
Right.
switchgear room. So you're talking about running, conduit and wire
That's exactly my point.
and like you said with the power requirements, who knows? You might need to you might need to add another section of switchgear and get more
Right, and
power
you
from
may
Con
not,
Edison.
right. The load may not be big enough. So how do you do it? So at the end of every show, we always talk about looking forward, because the windshield is bigger than the rearview
It
mirror.
is.
Right? We always talk about that, and my good friend Andrew Peters from Curry and Brown, he's always mentioned in every show, because at one of the very first podcasts, he always said his job is always to look forward. So I'm a very optimistic person.
Yeah.
So I don't really like my guests to be, not optimistic.
No, you have to be
But
optimistic and
we're
positive.
in a challenging time right now.
We
I
are.
mean, your office has a lot of electricians on the street every day in the maintenance side as well as the new construction side. It's been a tough go. We have work from years ago, but 2024 is really about trying to get work for 25, 26, 27.
Correct.
In our business, your business, even with protective maintenance, you don't just go in there and say, hey, this is going to cost you $30,000. And people go, okay, here's a check, Steve,
No.
start. There's time. So from a general overview, your dad being an estimator at Lippolis for a very long time,
Yep.
one of my favorite people in the world is Carmine Lippolis.
Yeah.
I love him. What is Lippolis's forecast of work coming out in New York City? And are they optimistic about the future, or do they? What's their take?
Yeah, I think we always stay optimistic. And listen, Lippolis is going to be open for 40 years in May, and Carmel Lippolis says it best. We've gone through, the recession. We've gone through now the pandemic.
Same here.
We've gone through so many ups and downs as a nation, and survived as a company, as a family that, there's always work on the other side. Whether
Right, you
it's
got to find it.
whether it's in Manhattan or one of the outer boroughs, people are always doing work. And
Right.
and like you said, the life sciences is a big boom. Regeneron Pharmaceuticals recently did a lot of work in Tarrytown, New York, and Westchester.
Right. So
There's
you
a
guys,
lot of
you guys not only cover, you guys cover a bigger
yeah.
area.
I mean, listen, we cover a lot of vertical markets. We build a lot of healthcare facilities, a lot of data centers, commercial. Vertical towers is one of our bread and butters. But we don't pigeonhole. We're doing a lot of like logistics facilities, like Amazons and
Yeah,
things of
that's a
that
big
nature.
business right now.
So
Yeah, us too.
a
We have
lot
a
of
bunch of distribution centers. and
yeah, a
things
lot
like
of
that.
exactly. That's what I was looking for. A lot of distribution centers. So I think the big takeaway here is maintain diverse. We touch energy efficiency, emergency service, electrical preventative maintenance, commercial construction. So
Across the board, like us.
yeah, you gotta exactly, and I think
And
that's
we'll end the show on this note. Having a podcast you have a podcast now,
We
Stephen,
do.
so
Thank
congratulations.
you.
Is letting our current customers as well as new customers know that we don't specialize just in one thing. So if they've used you for X, they feel that's what your specialty is. But in reality, they may not know that you do distribution centers like us. They may not know that we have a big place in life science or in healthcare
Correct.
or in affordable housing. You go down the list of verticals, there's a lot of them.
A lot.
There's a lot. But yet Lippolis did, when I met you guys, you were on a job with here in Brooklyn. And I always thought of you, just because you were on 2 jobs with us, that you did apartment buildings.
And that was
But
it.
but but yet that's a small part of your business. You do apartments buildings, and you do commercial high rises, you do office buildings, and you do all these things that we talked about. So one of the challenges for you through your podcast is going, like me, to let the world know that you do all of these things. So first of all, I wanna wish you the best.
Thank
you
you.
and Carmine with the new show and bringing this type of information to your audience.
It's very important.
Number 2, thank you for inviting me to be a guest, and I look forward to
Thank you.
being on the show and being able to answer any question that you have related to my field of the expertise of code and zoning and filing. And having said that, it's great to have you back.
Thank you,
This has
Sisto.
been very rewarding for me that I get people to come back after a year.
I appreciate it.
And we get to talk again. So
Thank you.
welcome back, and looking forward to having you back on next
Thank you
year.
for having me today, Sisto. Much appreciated.
Always.